As we have continued to observe, domestic violence is responsible for a high level of homicide cases around the world, but more so in a country like Nigeria, where you don't have adequate legal protection for victims of domestic violence. We estimate that domestic violence is about the single greatest cause of homicide. And this is what law enforcement agencies all over the world have taken into consideration. And that is why these countries have developed strong laws to ensure that domestic violence is as low as possible in terms of numbers. There are several measures in place in countries around the world to make sure that the menace of domestic violence is reduced. It's understood that if we can address and prevent or reduce significantly domestic violence cases, we will be saving lives. And there are a number of ways. There are very easy ways to connect domestic violence to homicide. Whether we are talking about accidental cases, where a husband and wife are fighting, none of them intended to kill the other, but an accident occurred. A push was too hard, and somebody hits her head on an object and dies from it, or falls off the rail, or falls the stairway. Those things occur. In such cases, it's accidental. Nobody wanted to kill someone. We also have deliberate cases where a woman poisons her husband, the husband poisons the wife, or a husband one spouse arranges the assassination of the other spouse. These cases occur, though not as frequent as the accidental cases, but they occur. Then you have the negligence cases. Negligence cases in the sense that nobody really anticipated that death will result from their actions, but they are negligent in the things they did, which ultimately result in death. An obvious case could be sexually transmitted diseases. When HIV was a major killer, many people infected their wives or their husbands through adultery, and death resulted. You also have cases where, in fact, I would say this, each time you begin to cheat on your partner, you make unnecessary enemies for your partner. If a married man, has a girlfriend, the girlfriend may ultimately come to see the man's wife as her rival, as her enemy, and someone to be gotten rid of. Also, the wife may see her husband's girlfriend, as someone to be gotten rid of. And they pursue these things. And vice versa. A woman who cheats on her husband may be making deadly enemies for her husband. So we view these issues of domestic violence as something more serious that many people realize. And we hope that the government and policymakers and lawyers and the courts will be sensitive to it. That is why in other countries we deal with domestic violence as an actuality as well as a potential. An actuality refers to a situation where domestic violence has occurred. Somebody has physically assaulted the other person. That is a clear case of domestic violence. But what about the other cases where there hasn't yet been physical assault, but parties are heading in that direction? Threats and certain behaviors. when you do things likely to ultimately lead to physical aggression against a family member, the law should not wait for you to actually commit the physical assault. The law can act preemptively. The law can actually step in and prevent certain conducts that inevitably lead to violence. So the challenge we've had here in DPA, working in Nigeria, is that many people still don't understand the danger that domestic violence poses for society. Many people still don't understand how it works. There are still so many cultural and traditional barriers that affect people's understanding of the danger of domestic violence. Those cultural beliefs and religious beliefs are things we are looking into as well. That's why we go to the root cause of these cases of violence, the inequality in the family, the intimidation, the notion of superiority of one gender over the other. We work on it, we educate people, we educate our members, and we educate the society at large. We're getting them to see these problems differently, to see gender relations differently, to see how men and women interact differently, to see the pattern of communication that exists between the gender groups as, to see it differently. So we work on this, and we continue to preach on equality of the genders. I am happy to say that despite the resistance we encountered in the beginning, there has been a marked shift in the way people see us and see our work, and in the way people see the subject of gender equality. 4 or 5 years ago, we encountered resistance everywhere. Each time we tried to suggest that the genders could be equal. But that has changed. We are seeing remarkable changes. And this is coinciding with the fact that more and more victims are now coming forward to discuss, to openly narrate their stories and demand for justice. People are no longer afraid to admit that they were beaten by their husbands. In the past, these women saw it as a taboo to be a victim. They would approach us with their cases, but they beg us not to make their cases public. They want to protect the aggressor. They want to protect their family name. They want to protect their reputation. And they want to think that by coming forward, they will be subjected to further victimization. But we try to tell them, no, if you have been a victim, the only way is to resist. The only way to stop being a victim is to reject your victimhood, to reject the causes of your oppression or the violence in your family. And it's working, because the more the victims are able to speak up, the better we're able to assist them, and the better we're able to hold accountable the violent partners. So that is the subject we shall continue to talk about in DPA. We shall continue to get our members to understand the menace of domestic violence and to join hands in fighting against it and in getting people to reject it at any point. Thank you for listening.